Dr. Lisa Martinez stared at her computer screen for the third time that morning, and the strange signals were still there. She worked at the big radio telescope in Puerto Rico, where scientists listen to space every day, but these sounds were different. They came in patterns that seemed too perfect to be natural. She called her friend Dr. Jake Thompson, who worked in the next building, and asked him to look at the data. Jake walked over with his coffee and sat down. Next to Lisa, he looked at the numbers on her screen and shook his head. "This is probably just some satellite bouncing signals around," he said, but Lisa knew it was not that simple. The signals came from too far away, and they repeated every 6 hours and 12 minutes exactly. Natural things in space did not work like clockwork. 3 days later, Lisa got a phone call from Dr. Helen Foster, who worked at SETI in California. Helen had seen the same patterns from her telescopes, and so had 12 other places around the world. All the signals came at the same time from the same direction in space. Lisa felt her stomach drop because this meant something big was happening. Captain Alex Rodriguez floated inside the International Space Station and looked out the window at Earth below. He had been in space for 4 months and knew what normal looked like up there. But today he saw something that made him grab his camera and call Mission Control right away. Beyond the moon, there were objects moving in a straight line like ships sailing across the ocean. The objects were huge and dark, and there were dozens of them. "Houston, we have something strange out here," Alex said into his radio. The voice from Earth told him to take pictures and send them down immediately. Alex took hundreds of photos and sent them through the secure channel. Within 2 hours, he got orders to keep watching and not talk to anyone about what he had seen down on Earth. Governments started making secret phone calls. The president called the heads of NASA and the military into a meeting. Similar meetings happened in Russia and China and England and everywhere else that had rockets and satellites. Everyone was asking the same question, but nobody had a good answer yet. Lisa Martinez found herself on a plane to Washington, D.C. 3 days after Helen Foster called her. She brought all her data about the radio signals and met with people who wore suits and had serious faces. They put her in a room with other scientists from around the world and told them they had 24 hours to figure out what was happening. Dr. Kevin Wright from MIT brought his computers and started working with Lisa to decode the signals. The patterns were getting stronger, which meant whatever was sending them was getting closer to Earth. A woman from the Pentagon named General Patricia Hayes sat with them and asked questions that showed she understood the science better than most generals. Jake Thompson arrived on the second day with more data from Puerto Rico. The signals now included something that looked like star maps and numbers that might be coordinates. Kevin Wright ran the numbers through his computers and found they pointed to Earth's solar system. The things Captain Rodriguez had seen beyond the moon were definitely coming toward Earth. On the fourth day, the signals changed completely. Instead of patterns and numbers, they heard something that sounded almost like language. Lisa worked with linguists and codebreakers to try to understand the sounds. The language had rhythm and structure, but used sounds that human mouths could not make. Some of the sounds were too high and others were too low for people to hear without special equipment. Captain Rodriguez reported that the objects beyond the moon had moved closer and were now clearly artificial. They were not rocks or ice, but metal constructions with smooth surfaces and geometric shapes. Some were as big as aircraft carriers, and others were even larger. They moved in perfect formation without any visible engines or exhaust. The world's best scientists gathered in underground bunkers and worked around the clock. They knew something was coming to Earth, and it was not friendly. The signals contained mathematical proofs and scientific formulas that showed whoever was sending them understood physics and chemistry better than humans did. This was first contact with aliens, but it did not feel like the movies had promised. Lisa Martinez hardly slept during those first weeks. She worked with teams of people to understand every piece of data they could gather. The aliens were smart, and their technology was far ahead of human science. But Lisa noticed something in the signals that worried her more than their advanced science. The mathematical patterns showed a kind of thinking that was cold and logical without any room for creativity or chaos. General Patricia Hayes looked at all the evidence and made the recommendation that changed everything. She told the president and other world leaders that humanity needed to prepare for war. The aliens were not coming to Earth to make friends or trade technology. They were coming to remove humans from the planet, and the signals proved it. The countdown to invasion had already begun. The sky above New York City suddenly filled with blue light, and everyone stopped walking to look up. A giant figure made of crystal and metal appeared floating above the buildings like a mountain in the air. The same thing happened in London, and Tokyo and Moscow and every other big city on Earth at exactly the same moment. People screamed and ran, but there was nowhere to hide from something so huge. The crystal figure began to speak, and its voice came from everywhere at once. Every radio and television and phone on Earth carried the same message in perfect English and Chinese and Spanish and every other human language. The voice was cold and mechanical, like a computer trying to sound alive. "People of the third planet," the voice said, "your kind has been watched for many years. You fight wars among yourselves. You destroy your world's air and water. You spread across space like a disease that consumes everything it touches. The Great Council of Worlds has decided that humanity cannot be allowed to continue." Dr. Lisa Martinez watched the broadcast from the Emergency Command Center in Washington, D.C. She sat next to General Patricia Hayes and Dr. Kevin Wright and dozens of other people who had been working to understand the alien signals. Everyone in the room was quiet and afraid because they finally knew what the aliens wanted. The crystal figure continued speaking. "Your planet will be preserved for better use. Your cities will be cleaned and your pollution will be removed. The animals and plants of this world deserve to live without human interference. You have 7 of your days to prepare yourselves for relocation to facilities where you will be processed efficiently and without unnecessary suffering." Dr. Jake Thompson was still in Puerto Rico listening to radio signals when the announcement came. He realized that relocation and processing were not good words when aliens used them. He started recording everything the aliens broadcast and sending it to Lisa and the other scientists. The alien language had words that meant death and destruction, but they used polite terms when talking to humans. Captain Alex Rodriguez watched from space as huge alien ships moved into position around Earth. There were hundreds of them now, and they blocked out parts of the sun when they passed between the space station and the star. Alex could see smaller ships moving between the big ones like worker bees around a hive. The aliens were getting ready for something big. President Collins spoke to the world from the White House basement. His face was serious, but his voice stayed calm as he told 7 billion people that humanity would not surrender without a fight. He announced that all countries would work together and share their weapons and soldiers and scientists. The human race had 7 days to become united or die as separate nations. Danny Kim was 22 years old and worked as a computer programmer in Seoul, South Korea. When he heard the alien broadcast, he did something that changed everything. He connected his computers to the internet and started trying to hack into the alien signals. Most people would have thought this was impossible, but Danny had grown up playing with code and networks, and he was better at it than almost anyone else in the world. While Danny worked on his computers, Dr. Lisa Martinez met with leaders from every country that had rockets or satellites. They gathered in a secret meeting room deep underground and looked at pictures that Captain Rodriguez had taken from space. The alien ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time, with smooth curves and sharp edges that seemed to cut through space itself. General Patricia Hayes explained what the military knew about alien weapons. The ships carried devices that could destroy entire cities from orbit. They had shields that stopped human missiles and bullets. Their technology was so advanced that fighting them with normal weapons would be like trying to stop a tank with sticks and stones. But Dr. Kevin Wright had found something interesting in the alien broadcasts. The crystal beings were not really individuals like humans, but parts of a group mind that thought and acted together. This made them very efficient, but it also made them weak in ways they did not understand. If someone could disrupt their communications even for a short time, the entire fleet might become confused and vulnerable. Danny Kim discovered something amazing while trying to break into alien computer systems. The aliens used quantum technology. That was far ahead of human science, but it worked on principles that human computers could understand and maybe even attack. He found that the alien networks had security holes just like human systems did, but in different places. Dr. Helen Foster from SETI worked with teams of linguists to decode more of the alien language. She learned that the crystal beings called themselves the Zephyrians, and they came from a star system 40 light-years away. They had destroyed other species before and considered it a duty to remove chaos from the galaxy. Humans represented the worst kind of chaos because they were unpredictable and creative. Captain Rodriguez reported that the alien ships were moving into attack positions around Earth. Some of the ships were as big as cities and carried millions of smaller craft inside them. The aliens had brought enough firepower to turn Earth into a dead rock floating in space. But they wanted to keep the planet intact, so they would use more careful methods to remove humanity. The 7 days passed quickly, and humanity worked harder than it ever had before. Scientists shared research across all borders. Military leaders planned desperate strategies. Engineers built weapons and defenses as fast as possible. Children were evacuated to underground shelters that had been prepared in secret. On the 7th day, the Zephyrian fleet moved into its final positions. The crystal figure appeared in the sky again and spoke its final message to humanity. Your time of preparation is over. Relocation will begin immediately. Do not resist, and your deaths will be quick and painless. Resistance will only increase your suffering before the inevitable end. But humanity had spent those 7 days preparing something the aliens did not expect. Danny Kim had created a computer virus that could attack Zephyrian quantum networks. Dr. Lisa Martinez had built devices that could interfere with alien communications. Captain Rodriguez had helped modify human satellites to broadcast disruption signals. The war was about to begin, and the aliens had no idea what they were really fighting. The first Zephyrian attack ships came down from orbit expecting to find cities full of panicking humans, but instead they found empty streets and silent buildings. Los Angeles looked like a ghost town with cars abandoned in the middle of roads and doors left open as if everyone had simply vanished. The alien ships scanned for human life signs but found almost nothing above ground. Carlos Rodriguez was an engineer who had spent his whole career digging tunnels for subways and sewers. When the government asked him to help prepare for the alien invasion, he smiled and told them he could hide entire cities underground if they gave him enough workers and equipment. Most people thought he was crazy, but General Patricia Hayes listened to his plan and gave him everything he needed for 6 months. While the aliens were still traveling toward Earth, Carlos had worked with mining companies and construction crews from around the world. They dug tunnels that connected major cities through underground highways that ran for thousands of miles. The tunnels were big enough for trucks and trains and had air systems that could keep millions of people alive underground for years. Dr. Emma Watson had been working for SpaceX before the aliens came, but now she designed power systems for the underground cities. She created small fusion reactors that were clean and safe and could run forever without fuel from the surface. Each reactor was no bigger than a shipping container, but could power a whole neighborhood of tunnel dwellers. When the Zephyrian ships arrived at Earth, they expected the invasion to take only a few days. Their computers had calculated that humans would panic and surrender once they saw alien technology. But the empty cities confused them, and their sensors could not penetrate deep enough underground to map the tunnel systems that Carlos Rodriguez had built. Captain Steve Miller had been a Navy SEAL before the invasion, but now he led a group of fighters who lived in tunnels beneath the Rocky Mountains. His team included former soldiers and police officers and ordinary people who had learned to fight during the preparation months. They moved through the tunnels like fish swimming through underground rivers and struck at alien installations on the surface before disappearing again. The Zephyrians landed troops in every major city on Earth but found themselves fighting ghosts. Human fighters would appear suddenly from manholes and storm drains and attack alien patrols before vanishing back underground. The aliens had weapons that could destroy buildings, but they could not fight an enemy. They could not find or predict. Lisa Martinez now worked from a laboratory that had been carved out of solid rock beneath what used to be the CDC headquarters in Atlanta. Her team included scientists from 20 different countries who had been evacuated to the tunnels when the invasion began. They studied captured alien technology and learned how to turn it against its creators. The underground cities were marvels of human engineering and cooperation. Dr. Emma Watson's fusion reactors powered vertical farms where plants grew in artificial light and produced more food than surface agriculture ever had. Children attended schools in carved stone classrooms and learned both normal subjects and how to fight aliens. Everyone had a job and everyone worked together because survival depended on it. Dr. Martinez discovered that Zephyrian scanning technology worked on a specific frequency that human electromagnetic pulse devices could disrupt. She worked with physicist Dr. John Park and electrical engineer Nina Vasquez to build portable EMP generators that could blind alien sensors. The devices were small enough to carry in a backpack, but powerful enough to shut down alien equipment for several minutes. Lieutenant Commander Amy Chun had been in charge of a submarine before the invasion, but now she led special forces teams that raided alien installations on the surface. Her soldiers included Sergeant Mike Davis and Corporal Julie Anderson and technical specialist Pete Johnson. They were experts at capturing alien technology and bringing it back to the underground laboratories for study. The Zephyrians began to realize they had made a serious mistake in their calculations about human behavior. Instead of panicking and surrendering, the humans had simply disappeared underground and continued fighting from positions that were almost impossible to attack. The alien ships could bomb the surface, but that would destroy the planet they wanted. To preserve, Supreme Arbiter Kethelin commanded the Zephyrian fleet from his flagship above Earth's North Pole. He had conquered 12 other worlds and expected humans to be no different from the species he had destroyed before. But these creatures were unlike anything in his experience. They fought without honor or logic and used tactics that made no sense. According to military theory, Commander Vexstar led the ground forces and reported to Kethelin that the humans were somehow coordinating their attacks across the entire planet. Underground fighters in North America struck at the same time as raiders in Europe and Asia. The human communication networks were quantum encrypted and impossible to intercept or jam with Zephyrian technology. Children born in the tunnels during the first year of occupation never saw sunlight, but they grew up strong and smart. Maya Patel was only 8 years old, but she could speak 3 human languages and was learning to read Zephyrian mathematics from captured data files. The underground schools taught children both human knowledge and alien science because they would need both to survive. The tunnel networks expanded every day as more humans learned to live underground. Carlos Rodriguez trained hundreds of engineers to dig new passages and build new chambers. The underground cities became more comfortable and efficient than many surface towns had been before the invasion. Humans were adapting to their new environment faster than the aliens had thought possible. Dr. Emma Watson's fusion reactors were copied and improved by engineers in tunnels around the world. Soon every underground city had clean power and recycled air and water systems that worked better than most surface utilities. The humans were not just surviving underground, they were thriving and building a civilization that could last for generations. Captain Steve Miller coordinated with resistance fighters on every continent through quantum communication networks that Danny Kim had designed. The young programmer had learned to use alien technology better than the aliens themselves and created secure channels that the Zephyrians could not break or trace. After 2 years of occupation, the Zephyrians controlled the surface of Earth, but the planet's real population lived in a hidden world beneath their feet. The aliens had won the cities and the sky, but they had lost the war for humanity's survival. The underground dwellers were preparing for something the invaders could not imagine. 3 years into the occupation, humanity had changed in ways the Zephyrians never expected. The underground cities were no longer hiding places, but centers of innovation where human creativity mixed with captured alien technology to create things neither species had imagined alone. Dr. Lisa Martinez worked in laboratories carved from bedrock where the most brilliant minds on Earth collaborated. on projects that would have seemed impossible before the invasion. Maya Patel was now 11 years old and could solve mathematical problems that had puzzled human scientists for decades. She had grown up learning both human intuition and Zephyrian logic, and her mind worked in ways that surprised even her teachers. Maya and other children born during the occupation thought differently than any humans who had lived before them, and they saw solutions that older people missed. Lieutenant Commander Amy Chen's raids on the surface had evolved from desperate strikes into precise operations that captured specific pieces of alien technology. Her team now included former Navy SEALs like Sergeant Mike Davis and Brilliant engineers like technical specialist Pete Johnson who could disassemble Zephyrian devices while under fire and carry the pieces back to underground workshops. The workshops themselves were marvels of human adaptation. Dr. Emma Watson had designed modular fusion reactors that could be reconfigured to power different kinds of equipment. The reactors now powered not just lights and air systems, but also manufacturing centers where human engineers built hybrid devices that combined the best of both technologies. Dr. Martinez had discovered that Zephyrian crystals could store enormous amounts of information, but only if they were grown under specific conditions that the aliens guarded carefully. Working with chemist Dr. Rachel Green and materials scientist Dr. Sam Lee, she learned to grow the crystals in underground laboratories, using minerals extracted from deep mines that the aliens could not monitor. The information stored in these hybrid crystals included complete maps of Zephyrian technology and detailed records of how their ships and weapons functioned. Danny Kim used this data to improve his computer viruses and create programs that could not only disrupt alien systems but actually take control of them for short periods. Captain Steve Miller's resistance network had expanded to include fighters on every continent, who moved through tunnel systems that now spanned the globe. The tunnels were no longer simple hiding places but transportation networks that allowed humans to coordinate attacks and share resources faster than the aliens could respond. Children in the underground schools learned subjects that had never been taught before. Along with normal mathematics and science, they studied alien psychology and Zephyrian military tactics. Maya Patel helped design new teaching methods that used both human creativity and alien logic to solve complex problems that required both approaches. The Zephyrians began to realize that their occupation was failing in ways they did not understand. Supreme Arbiter Kethelin received reports that human technology was advancing faster during the war than it had in the previous century of peace. The species they had expected to destroy within months was instead using the pressure of survival to evolve beyond recognition. Commander Vexstar led increasingly desperate attempts to locate and destroy the main human strongholds, but the tunnel networks were too complex and well defended. Every time Zephyrian forces found an entrance to the underground cities, they discovered that the humans had already evacuated through passages that led in dozens of different directions. Dr. Watson's fusion technology had advanced beyond anything humans had achieved before the invasion. The reactors were now smaller and more powerful and could be built using materials that were common on Earth. More importantly, the humans had learned to shield the reactors with Zephyrian stealth technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. The underground cities had become completely self-sufficient and in many ways more advanced than surface civilization had ever been. Vertical farms produced food that was healthier and more nutritious than traditional agriculture. Recycling systems recovered useful materials from everything including human waste and turned it into resources for manufacturing and construction. Dr. Martinez made a breakthrough that changed the entire war when she discovered how to reverse engineer Zephyrian communication technology. Working with physicist Dr. John Park and computer expert Danny Kim, she built devices that could not only intercept alien messages but also send false information that the Zephyrians accepted as genuine. Lieutenant Commander Chun used this technology to trick alien patrols into walking into traps or to convince Zephyrian commanders that human forces were located in places where there were actually no underground installations. The aliens began to doubt their own intelligence reports and made mistakes that cost them equipment and personnel. Young Maya Patel surprised everyone when she solved the problem that had puzzled both human and alien scientists. She figured out how to combine human quantum computers with Zephyrian crystal storage to create hybrid systems that were more powerful than anything either species had built separately. Her solution was so elegant that even adult scientists had trouble understanding how an 11-year-old had thought of it. The hybrid computers allowed Danny Kim to create viruses that were far more sophisticated than his earlier programs. The new viruses could learn and adapt and spread through Zephyrian networks like digital diseases that got stronger instead of weaker as they infected more systems. Captain Rodriguez reported from his hidden orbital facility that human satellites equipped with Dr. Watson's fusion power and Dr. Martinez's stealth technology were now impossible for the aliens to detect or destroy. The satellites formed a communication network that connected all the underground cities and allowed perfect coordination of resistance activities around the world. Dr. Emma Watson realized that humanity was no longer the same species that had existed before the invasion. The underground cities had created a new kind of human society where cooperation was more important than competition and where scientific advancement happened faster than ever before. The children growing up in the tunnels were smarter and more adaptable than their parents, and they saw possibilities that previous generations could never have imagined. The Zephyrians had wanted to erase humanity because they thought humans were too chaotic and unpredictable to be allowed to spread across the galaxy. But their attempt to destroy the human race had instead forced it to evolve into something far more dangerous than they had feared. The creatures hiding beneath Earth's surface were no longer the primitive beings the aliens had come to eliminate. General Patricia Hayes looked at reports from resistance cells around the world and realized that humanity was ready to stop hiding and start fighting back. The underground years had been necessary for survival, but now they had become preparation for something the aliens would never expect. The time had come to show the Zephyrians what the human race had become. Danny Kim stood in front of the largest computer array ever built by humans and prepared to launch what he called the Prometheus Protocol. The virus he had created over 4 years of underground development was not just a program but a digital weapon designed specifically to turn Zephyrian technology against itself. Working with former Google programmer Lisa Shang and AI researcher Dr. Kate Williams, he had built something that would rewrite the rules of the war. The computer array filled an entire chamber carved from solid granite beneath the Colorado mountains. Dr. Emma Watson's fusion reactors powered quantum processors that combined human creativity with Zephyrian logic in ways that neither species had achieved alone. The hybrid technology was so advanced that even its creators were not sure exactly how it would behave once activated. Maya Patel had grown into a teenager, whose mind worked in ways that amazed the adult scientists around her. She had helped design key parts of the Prometheus Protocol by solving mathematical problems that required both human intuition and alien precision. Her contributions were so important that Danny Kim insisted she should be the one to press the button that would launch the virus into Zephyrian networks. Captain Alex Rodriguez commanded a hidden space station that had been built from salvaged materials and powered by Dr. Watson's most advanced fusion reactors. The station was invisible to Zephyrian sensors and carried modified human satellites that could broadcast the Prometheus Protocol directly to the alien fleet. Alex and his crew had spent months preparing for this moment. General Patricia Hayes coordinated the surface operations from a command center deep beneath Washington, D.C. Resistance fighters around the world were ready to emerge from their tunnels at exactly the right moment. Captain Steve Miller and Lieutenant Commander Amy Chung had positioned their teams near critical alien installations and were waiting for the signal to attack. Dr. Lisa Martinez had developed portable quantum disruptors based on her years of studying captured Zephyrian technology. The devices could permanently disable alien equipment while leaving human technology unaffected. Every resistance fighter carried one of these weapons and knew exactly when and how to use it. The plan was complex and required perfect timing across the entire planet. At exactly noon Greenwich Mean Time, the Prometheus Protocol would launch from the hidden space station and begin infecting Zephyrian computer networks. 30 seconds later, resistance fighters would activate their quantum disruptors to blind alien sensors. 1 minute after that, human forces would emerge from underground and begin the coordinated attack that would drive the invaders from Earth. Supreme Arbiter Kefalin sat in his command center aboard the flagship and reviewed reports from his ground commanders. The human resistance had become more organized and effective over the past year, but he still believed that Zephyrian technology was superior. His computers calculated that even coordinated human attacks could not seriously damage the invasion. Fleet. Commander Vextar was less confident than his superior. The humans had shown an alarming ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. Their raids had become more precise, and their technology had advanced faster than Zephyrian scientists thought possible. Vextar had requested additional ships and weapons, but Kefalin believed they were unnecessary. Danny Kim looked at the countdown timer and felt his heart beating faster. The Prometheus Protocol represented 4 years of human ingenuity and determination compressed into a single moment of digital warfare. The virus contained millions of lines of code that could learn and adapt as it spread through alien networks. Once launched, it would be impossible to stop or control. Dr. Watson's fusion reactors hummed with power as they prepared to channel enormous amounts of energy through the quantum computers. The hybrid technology pushed both species' science to its absolute limits, and there was no guarantee that the systems would survive the massive data transfer required to launch the virus. Maya Patel stood next to Danny Kim and placed her hand on the activation switch. At 15 years old, she had become one of the most important people in human history. Her mathematical insights had made the Prometheus Protocol possible, and her steady nerves would determine whether humanity lived or died as a free species. The countdown reached 0, and Maya pressed the switch. Quantum computers throughout the underground cities activated simultaneously and began transmitting the Prometheus Protocol through Captain Rodriguez's satellite network. The virus shot toward the Zephyrian fleet at the speed of light and began penetrating alien computer systems faster than their security programs could respond. 30 seconds. Later, resistance fighters around the world activated their quantum disruptors. Zephyrian sensors went blind as electromagnetic pulses scrambled their detection equipment. Alien commanders suddenly found themselves unable to see or track human forces that began emerging from tunnel entrances everywhere. 1 minute after the attack began, Captain Steve Miller led his team out of underground passages in the Rocky Mountains and began destroying Zephyrian ground installations. Lieutenant Commander Amy Chun's forces struck alien positions in Europe at exactly the same time. Similar attacks happened on every continent as humanity revealed the true size and coordination of its resistance network. The Prometheus Protocol spread through Zephyrian computer networks like digital wildfire. The virus did not simply crash alien systems but turned them against each other. Navigation computers began sending ships toward collisions. Weapon systems targeted other Zephyrian vessels instead of human positions. Communication networks carried false orders that sent alien forces into traps. Supreme Arbiter Kefalin watched in horror as his perfectly organized invasion fleet dissolved into chaos. Ships that had maintained precise formations for years began drifting out of control. Ground forces lost contact with orbital command. Weapons platforms started firing on their own support vessels instead of human targets. Commander Vextar tried to maintain order among his ground troops, but found that his communication systems were broadcasting contradictory orders in his own voice. The humans had not only disrupted Zephyrian technology, but had learned to impersonate alien commanders with perfect accuracy. Panic spread through the invasion force as soldiers received impossible orders from officers who claimed to be in multiple places at once. Dr. Martinez emerged from the tunnel systems for the first time in 4 years and saw sunlight again. Around her, thousands of human fighters poured out of hidden entrances and began the systematic destruction of every alien installation on Earth. The coordination was perfect because the underground communication networks had allowed precise planning. For this moment, Captain Rodriguez watched from his hidden space station as the Zephyrian fleet began to tear itself apart. The Prometheus Protocol had exceeded all expectations and was spreading through alien networks faster than even Danny Kim had predicted. Entire squadrons of Zephyrian ships were now under human control and were attacking their former allies. The battle for Earth was not lasting hours as the humans had expected, but was already effectively over. The Zephyrians had built their entire civilization around perfect coordination and logical control. When that coordination collapsed, their advanced technology became a liability instead of an advantage. The species that had conquered 12 worlds was being defeated by the digital ghosts of human creativity. The Zephyrian retreat was not a military withdrawal, but a panicked flight from a species they no longer understood. Supreme Arbiter Kethalin ordered his remaining ships to abandon Earth orbit and return to their home systems as quickly as possible. The humans had not just defeated the invasion fleet, but had turned Zephyrian technology against itself in ways that violated every principle of logical warfare. Dr. Lisa Martinez stood on the surface of Earth for the first time in 4 years and breathed air that was cleaner than it had been before the invasion. The underground cities had developed recycling systems, so efficient that they had actually improved the planet's atmosphere while hiding from the aliens. Humanity had not just survived the occupation, but had learned to live better than before. Maya Patel was now 16 years old and led the first generation of humans who thought in ways that combined the best of both species. Her peers had been educated in underground schools where human creativity was mixed with Zephyrian logic to create hybrid approaches to every problem. They were not just rebuilding human civilization, but were creating something entirely new. The underground cities did not empty when the aliens fled because they had become the foundation for a new kind of human society. Dr. Emma Watson's fusion technology provided clean energy that was cheaper and safer than anything the surface world had used. The vertical farms could feed populations larger than Earth had ever supported, and the recycling systems turned waste into resources with perfect efficiency. Danny Kim looked at the quantum computers that had made victory possible and realized that humanity now possessed technology that surpassed both species' previous achievements. The hybrid systems combined human innovation with Zephyrian precision to solve problems that neither approach could handle alone. The young programmer had become one of the architects of humanity's transformation. Captain Alex Rodriguez was promoted to admiral and given command of humanity's first interstellar space program. The ships being built in hidden orbital facilities used hybrid technology that made them faster and more powerful than anything the Zephyrians had brought to Earth. The vessels would carry human explorers to other star systems, not as conquerors but as representatives of a new kind of civilization. The Galactic Concord received reports from the fleeing Zephyrian fleet that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare and evolution. The species they had voted to eliminate had not only survived, but had used the pressure of near extinction to evolve beyond recognition. The humans were no longer the chaotic primitives that the Council had feared. Lieutenant Commander Amy Chun helped design the new surface cities that would be built using underground technology. The cities would be powered by fusion reactors and supplied by vertical farms and connected by tunnel networks that made them nearly invulnerable to attack. But more importantly, they would be governed by principles of cooperation that the underground years had taught humanity. General Patricia Hayes became the first director of Human Space Command and oversaw the integration of surface and underground populations. The people who had lived through the occupation were different from those who remembered the old world. They had learned that survival required cooperation and that scientific advancement happened fastest when everyone worked together toward common goals. Dr. Martinez continued her research in laboratories that were now above ground but still used the hybrid technology developed during the war years. Her team included scientists from every nation who had learned to collaborate without regard for old political boundaries. The discoveries they made would benefit all humanity, because the underground years had taught them that division meant death. Maya Patel enrolled in the first university designed specifically for students who had grown up during the occupation. The school taught both human and Zephyrian knowledge systems and produced graduates who could think in ways that neither species had achieved alone. Maya planned to become an engineer and help design the starships that would carry humanity to other worlds. Captain Steve Miller left the military and became a teacher in the new schools that were being built on the surface. He taught children who had never known war how to solve problems through cooperation and innovation. The resistance tactics he had used against the aliens became lessons in creative thinking and resource management. The hybrid starships were launched 5 years after the Zephyrian retreat. Admiral Rodriguez commanded the first vessel to leave the solar system and carry human representatives to the edge of Zephyrian space. The ship was not armed for war, but carried invitations to dialogue and examples of the hybrid technology that both species could benefit from sharing. Dr. Watson's fusion reactors powered not just Earth, but the growing network of human colonies that were being established throughout the solar system. The technology was so efficient and clean that it allowed massive populations to live comfortably in space habitats that were completely self-sufficient. Humanity was spreading across the galaxy, but in ways that enhanced rather than damaged the worlds they visited. The Zephyrians, who met the first human diplomatic mission, were shocked to discover that their former enemies bore no grudges and sought cooperation rather than revenge. The humans offered to share hybrid technologies that could solve problems both species faced. The meeting took place on a neutral world where representatives could discuss the future without fear. Danny Kim had become the head of the Galactic communication network that connected human colonies and alien civilizations through quantum channels that could not be intercepted or jammed. His protocols ensured that different species could communicate safely and honestly without fear that their messages would be used against them. 20 years after the failed invasion, Earth had become the center of a new kind of galactic civilization. The underground cities were now centers of learning where beings from dozens of species came to study hybrid technologies that combined the best aspects of different approaches to science and philosophy. The planet that the Zephyrians had tried to cleanse had become a beacon of cooperation. Maya Patel commanded her own starship at the age of 36 and led exploration missions to distant galaxies. Her crew included humans who had grown up during the occupation and aliens who had learned from human examples of adaptation and innovation. They were not conquerors but explorers who sought to understand and preserve the diversity of life throughout the universe. The Galactic Concord that had once voted for humanity's extinction now looked to human representatives for guidance on difficult problems that required creative solutions. The species that had been condemned as chaotic and primitive had instead shown other civilizations how to adapt and grow and survive challenges that seemed impossible. Dr. Martinez was elected as the first human member of the Galactic Council at the age of 70. She represented not just Earth but the principles that humanity had learned during its darkest years. Cooperation produced better results than competition. Diversity strengthened civilizations rather than weakening them. The pressure that seemed designed to destroy could instead forge something stronger and more beautiful than what had existed before. The Zephyrians had wanted to erase humanity because they feared that human chaos would spread across the galaxy and disrupt the logical order they preferred. They had succeeded in erasing the old humanity, but what emerged from the underground years was something that made the galaxy more diverse and creative and alive than it had ever been before. The flames of human determination had indeed spread to other worlds, but they brought light and warmth, rather than destruction wherever they touched.